welcome back. We're so grateful that you're joining us on another episode of You Are From God. My name's Tyler Hall.
And I'm Scott Taylor.
And we're very thankful that you've joined us for another episode. We are continuing on in the Gospel of Mark to go along with our weekly Bible reading plan. We're looking at Mark 5 and Mark 6 today, and for our Old Testament wisdom reference, we have read Proverbs 2 for this week. So, Scott, let's just touch on Proverbs 2 a little bit to kind of get us grounded, and then we'll dive into the Gospel.
Yeah, Proverbs is obviously just a beautiful book about the wisdom of God and the wisdom of a father in many cases telling his son and the information that you would tell your son. And chapter 2 really dives into this. And I love, Tyler, how it starts off by talking about this word if. And in verse 1, he says, "My son, if you will receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom, incline your heart to understanding. For if you cry out for discernment, lift your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasure, then you will discern the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God." And it continues talking about the same thing, but just that idea that the treasure's always there. It's always there for us to strive to have, but it's that if word that we always talk about that is so important. It's your decision. It's our choice. And that's the beautiful thing about the book of Proverbs. It seems very simple from that standpoint. And on one hand, it is. God is absolutely willing and desiring to give us these things. And we're able to grow in these subjects. But it still comes down to my choice. And there's no better place to go to really understand how people saw God and his wisdom than when we talk about the Gospels and what Jesus does.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, but Mark is obviously one of the synoptic Gospels. There's a lot of parallel with Matthew and Luke, but when you come to Mark, there's a few things that set it apart, and I just love how Mark handles in chapter 5 the story of these three people. You can read these together and notice a few patterns. There's a lot of begging going on from all three parties. In particular, the three individuals that are seeking Jesus all have a moment where they fall down before him. So whether it's the demoniac who has the legion, whether we're talking about Jairus approaching him and asking him to come to his house to save his daughter, he falls down before him. And then the woman with the issue of blood she's had for 12 years coming down. Once she's already touched him and she's been healed, he knows something's happened. He's waiting for her to come forward and gives her that opportunity to do it on her own, because obviously Jesus knows. But she comes down and falls down before him. And so there's this posture that if you're visualizing this, people are just coming to Jesus in this state of complete helplessness, in the case of the demoniac, in this place of extreme need and urgency, like Jairus, just, I've got a problem, I need to solve this now. And then from a place of extreme gratitude and gratefulness. Obviously, there's fear mixed in with that woman, having, been caught, so to speak, but she's just been healed. She's literally been healed after years of not being able to be healed by everything that the world's been giving to her. And so you see, I think, in all three of these stories, a picture of who we are when we are in sin, when we're striving to escape from sin and to get back to God, and then ultimately where we are when we are reunited with God, when we have this relationship with him. And ultimately it's powerful when you look at Jairus and this woman whose stories are kind of overlapping at the same time. Jairus wants his daughter to be healed, but Jesus refers to this woman after she's come forward to him. He'll refer to her as daughter. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 34, he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Our theme this year, Scott, here at West Mason is "You are a child of God." And so for Jesus to say this idea of daughter, it kind of ties it back into Proverbs 2, where it's a father telling, my son, there's this authority, there's this sense of a position of authority of a parent instructing a child, but it's not done from trying to exert force or pressure or domineering will. It is truly based on wanting the best for the one that you are directing and guiding. And so I think with all three of these, you just see such a clear picture of what Jesus is doing in real time, but what God's doing through Jesus for each and every one of us as we're reading the gospel, as we become aware of our own sinful state, and the need that we have in seeking that, and God just being ready to heal us, which is just such a powerful picture, no matter which of these three you relate to more. I think you can find something in all of them that speaks to either where we have been separated from God, suffering under sin, or where we find ourselves once we have been healed, when we are at the feet of Jesus.
I think you also see in these stories as well the idea of, as you brought it up, the authority of God. When it comes to the demons, they see him as the Son of God. You are the Son of the Most High. They knew exactly who he was,
Yeah.
the power that he had, the concern that they have because of who he is. And then you have a synagogue official who certainly would have understood the law,
Mm.
but knew that Jesus had tremendous authority of what he was going to be able to do. And this woman just wanted to touch the hem of his garment. You know, you talk about understanding the power of that one. I love the rest of the story of Jairus where he goes to his house, and obviously this amazing moment that occurs. Um, the servant comes and says, "Don't bother the teacher anymore. She has passed away." And Jesus hears this and just tells him, "Don't be afraid any longer, only believe," in verse 36. And you go on, and a few of the disciples, Peter, James, and John, who are normally the ones that will go with him into something like this, um, go with him. And there's a lot of the commotion that it talks about in verse 39 and the weeping that was happening. But Jesus says, "The child has not died, but is asleep." Tyler, the reaction of the humans here is normal, I would think. You're going to laugh. Like, I know what dead looks like. I
Yeah.
know that she's dead. But to our God, when we talk about his power and authority, death is like being asleep. It's nothing to him from that standpoint. And that is an amazing comfort for me.
Mm.
The one thing, or one of the things that a lot of people are just absolutely afraid of, is death. And Jesus has given us victory over that death. And it's beautiful for us to understand that power. And so you have these phrases that only God is able to do anyway in these stories that we, or these accounts that we were reading. But you have that he's able to give her back to her parents, and just the amazement of that moment. You and I both are blessed to have children, and in particular we have daughters,
Mm.
and we can understand this story so well from that perspective of what that would be like. 12 years for the little girl growing up, that would have been pretty amazing. We've all, we've been in those moments, you're in them now
Yeah.
still, of just 12 years and watching your child grow and the different things that they go through and the excitement that happens. But this woman was dealing with this issue for 12 years. That's a long 12 years
Yeah.
to be dealing with that, and God knew both situations,
Mhm.
and he's going to be obviously involved with both situations. And to your point, we can learn so much from that, and how he still is going to view us as his sons and his daughters, though we are in need of him.
Mhm.
We struggle with things, we're dealing with things, and he knows that. And it's just so beautiful to see how he handles this. And then you get to this another amazing chapter 6 where we learn so much more about him.
Yeah, you've got Jesus traveling back and forth across the sea here at these different places. He goes across to the Gerasenes, meets this man, comes back, interacting with Jairus and the woman, and then he's going to go back to Nazareth. And we know from other Bible accounts and the parallel accounts in other Gospels that the people just can't get past that they know Jesus here. And so it talks about, this is one of the two places in the Gospels where it says Jesus will marvel at people. The first one is at a centurion's faith, and here he's marveling at unbelief of the people just because they cannot get past their knowledge of him from, here's your family, this is your hometown, you think you're better than us? Like, what's the deal with that? And so obviously that's a pretty rough place to come from after having seen these amazing miracles and the amazement that we just saw, to now, it's all about how people are interpreting. It's the choice of people to see these things and choose to be drawn in, to accept and to listen, rather than this looking for reasons not to follow or obey, or at
Right.
least give some more listening ear to what Jesus is saying. But when you look at this chapter as a whole, Scott, in Mark chapter 6, you get a picture, I think, of Jesus. Obviously, we saw the rescuing in chapter 5. Now he is sending out his apostles in particular. There's some other stories in here with John the Baptist and things that are going all on in the meantime, or behind the scenes, we might call it. But really the key points for this chapter and me are Jesus sending out the 12 apostles with authority to cast out demons, and they're proclaiming in particular the message, as Mark will put it. They are going out in verse 12, so they went out and proclaimed that people should repent. The message that they are carrying is turn back to God. And Jesus is the one that makes that all possible, even for us today. So that's their message. They're going out and doing these amazing things. Jesus has given them this authority and says, I want you to be a part of this work. All the authority and power is resting in Jesus, but he wants us to be partners in that work with him. And so you've got them going out, news spreads because of this. Herod catches wind of this, and you get the story of what happened to John and how he dies. But then you come back around after that account in verse 30, and the apostles come back from this campaign, if you will, and they tell them all the amazing things. And Jesus is like, all right, it's time to rest, which I think we can all relate to. Like, it's been a long day, a long week, a long month, whatever it might be, of just strenuous ongoing work with highs and lows. We just need to recharge. We need to break. And the people are just going to keep following him. That idea of the crowd, like we talked about last week. And so you've got Jesus. I thought about this, Scott, in verse 34, when he gets to the other side and all those people are there. I thought of like 10 different emotions that I would have had in that moment. And they ranged from straight up anger to exhaustion to despair to frustration, like all these different things that I would have felt like, this is me time. Go away. And verse 34, you see the heart of God. He sees this great crowd and he has compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And it's just powerful to realize that's my God. And I have weaknesses and I need me time and I have all these needs. And Jesus certainly did as a human, but he's God in the flesh. And so his heart for them is clearly on display as he begins teaching them, and he's doing all these many things for them to the point where they need to eat. It gets late enough, they need to eat. And so you have this awesome miracle. But again, he calls on the apostles. You give them something to eat. And it's an invitation, as we saw with their campaign earlier, to be involved with this work. God's the only one who can feed this group of 10,000 plus people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. But he calls on the apostles, you're going to carry this to them. You're going to take what I give you and give it to people who are in need. And that is just such a beautiful picture of God's people today, God's disciples, going and spreading the true word, the bread of life, if you will, to people who need it.
I think the other thing that's neat here was a couple of things. Verse 33, I find fascinating. So they get in a boat and they go to the other side, and the people see this. And I love that it says they go out together on foot from the cities and run to where they know he's going to go. Yeah. You talk about seeking God.
Yeah.
You talk about Proverbs 2, that if part, if you are seeking him, you're going to find him. And the idea, you see that here in real time. They're in a desolate area, for that time. To call this area desolate for us would be, just their normal places would be desolate. They didn't have the technology that we have, we're blessed to have. And so you think about them being out there, they couldn't go to a store to get the food. There's nothing that they were going to be able to do. And you see the only God part, to your point that you were making, that what he is able to do. The interesting part to me, Tyler, with this is that the disciples were able to do some amazing things before that God gave them power. But to truly understand, and this is where we can struggle mightily with this, is that our God is greater than anything that we are able to come up with in our minds. The struggles that we go through that are real and the ones that we can imagine, in many cases. And so Jesus knew that he could feed them. And not only does he feed them, in verse 42, they ate and were satisfied. They were full when they were finished. And so much so, there were 12 full baskets left over that they were able to collect. And so he's able to give it to them abundantly, and it's the same for us. You think about what all the apostles saw, the disciples see here, and they're still were struggling understanding how great God is. Mm-hmm. And I think the reality for us is, as we read these stories, is to apply it to that point. God has, if you look back in your life, I know for me, I see God on every page, of my life. And I see how he's worked in my life and how he's worked in other people's lives. And then the next issue comes up, and now I'm going to question whether or not he's big enough to be able to handle those situations, or if he's going to be able to walk on this water in the next story. Like, there's always something that we can see him being greater than whatever else he was. And he would always will say, don't be afraid, it is I. Where's your faith? Those types
Mhm.
of things. And he's just teaching them like he's teaching us. Make sure you understand that God is greater than anything that you're going to go through.
Yeah.
Don't keep moving the box to a bigger box. He's greater than the
Yeah,
boxes.
and that requires trust. That requires a willingness to go where Jesus calls us to go, to get involved and get our hands dirty, so to speak,
Right.
with, going amongst the people, feeding them. It requires us to trust and let God be God and do my role, but not try to take on his role or limit his role, certainly. Yeah, you talked about Jesus walking on the water. There's a fascinating phrase that Mark adds in here about how the apostles view this at the end in verse 52. In verse 51, he got into the boat with them after, walking on the water, NBD. That means no big deal for the older folks watching. The younger people might have caught on to that. But, he walks on the water, which is something only Jesus can do. And then the wind ceased, and they were utterly astounded. Verse 52, for they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened. That's a phrase in the Bible that we don't normally project upon the good guys in the story. Like, that's a Pharaoh
Just to add
phrase.
New American Standards version of this, it says, "For they had not gained any insight from the incident of the loaves," to
Yeah.
that point.
So you're talking about trying in the different Bible translations, going back to the idea of being present and how it's phrased. And so you're almost casting this wider perspective of what it means to be hardened of heart. Like, these are people who are following him. And so we can have hard hearts, so to speak. I like the way you phrased it earlier before we started recording. It's the idea here of being hard headed. Like, we're not actually taking the time to think about it and process it and apply it to realize, oh, this is who God is. This is what he can do. This is how and why I can trust him. And so it was just such a fascinating thing as I read it, that it's okay. Like, they're still learning, they're hitting road bumps, they're wrestling and struggling with their faith, and they haven't caught on to this part yet. But I think for all of us, it just shows I need to look for those places where God wants me involved in his kingdom, what he's called me to be doing and active, how he's sent me out to this lost and dying world. And if there's things that I don't understand, that's okay. Keep following him, keep looking to him, keep trusting him, and we're going to find it, as again Proverbs 2 talks
Yeah.
about.
I think it's neat in the way that we have this set up. Mark, the fifth chapter, he starts off going to this area that he's at now, and where he's going after the walking on the water and the various things in verse 53 as he gets to the shore. This time, the first time the people wanted him to leave, they were afraid of what he was doing. Now you have them, they recognize him, and they bring people that are sick to for
Mm.
him to heal them and all that he does here. And to your point, you're going to have times where we see throughout the scriptures that the reaction of the people immediately was fear and scared to death of who this
Mhm.
man is. Now they're wanting him to heal him. They're wanting him, and so you see the growth opportunity that we can all have. And here it's just in real time. We're seeing this as we're reading this in real time. And so the disciples also, they're learning new things. Jesus could calm the storm. Now you're telling me he can walk on the water?
Yeah.
There's it's amazing to see how they grow, but it's the same for us. And that, I think, for me, is the takeaway and why Proverbs 2 is so important in this conversation. It's all around us. We can read it, we can see it in our lives, but it's still that if part. You have to learn from the incident. You have to learn from the things that he has done for you in the past to understand, as you said, that trust piece that he's going to take care of me. It's not
Mm.
if he's going to take care of me. It may not be in the way that I thought he was going to, but he's going to take care of us. And that's the beautiful thing about our God. And so we're blessed to be able to read these stories, and sometimes I'm afraid we read them and almost come away as, oh, how could the disciples have not thought about this? We do it every day.
Yeah.
And that's the sad part for us,
Mm.
but it's a blessing for us that we can learn from this moment and move forward in our growth in our relationship with God.
Yeah, you see that in the disciples. Like, they grow over the course of the gospel accounts into the letters that some of them will write in the New Testament, the things that they're willing to do. That's our journey. And so, lest we're too hard on them, we can realize, hey, I can do more.
Right.
I can gain more insight. I can come to a deeper understanding and a fuller, more robust trust of God, and following him more resolutely in those things. So that's the journey we're all on. And it's so awesome to be reminded again, going back to Mark 5, where we kind of started, that the whole reason we do it, we just have to be reminded he's saved us. He's brought us out of these terrible situations where we were separated from God, and now we are his children, which is just, it's why we do everything we do. It's why we are obeying him. It's why we're having this podcast. It's why hopefully you're listening as you're striving to get a closer relationship with God. And so we're really thankful that you have tuned in for this episode. Be sure to share it with somebody you think it would encourage. And we are just so thankful for the opportunity to come to you each week. We'll be back next time with the following chapters in Mark, probably another section of Psalm 119. But again, if you want to follow along with us so you're prepared for these episodes when they come out, our reading plan is on our website, wmcoc.org. Check that out. Download the Google Calendar or print off the PDF so you can follow along reading with us, and we can all grow as children of God together. And remember, you are from God.